I'm Filippa. Welcome to my channel Awkward the Talk, where I give parents the tools, skills, and knowledge to provide their children with mindful sexual education. Today's topic is why is sex ed crucial? So let me list a couple of things and have a conversation with you about why it is so important what I do. Basically, a child's sexual education should begin at a very young age. We talk a lot about sex ed for teenagers and for young adults. Most of this is focused on getting teens to have safe sex, preventing unwanted pregnancies, and the spread of disease. So what I want to do with mindful sexual education is highlight that sexuality is not just having sex, and that it is about who we are and how we see ourselves and how we relate to other people and the world around us. So when do we start this education? We start it in the womb when we are, when you have a baby and you're pregnant and you start talking to your baby in your stomach. That's already sexual education, because you are already teaching that baby what it is to be loved and what it is to be wanted. Why I think it is important for small children to get sexual education is that children have questions about their bodies and about where they come from, and also about where they go after death. Death is a very common subject for children as well. This inquisitiveness of, why we're here, what are we doing here, and where do we go from here, that we think only great minds of philosophers think of. Really, these are questions that begin to bubble in children's minds. It is an uninterrupted, continuous process that we cannot stop. So whether we want to have these conversations about bodies, feelings, relationships, and sex or not, children are going to learn about these topics. And really what you want to do is get ahead of that and be the one that offers them the correct information, and that you deliver it in a playful, everyday life kind of way. But you do that respectfully and taking into consideration the developmental stage that your child is at. So you shouldn't wait for them to come to you with questions, because sometimes kids are curious about these subjects, but they are shy about asking about them. The other thing about sex ed that I think is crucial that parents know is that it is the main responsibility of sexual education is on the parents. And I know a lot of people disagree with me, and that's okay. But although it is very important that children get sexual education in school, I think it is very important that they get it at home too. Why is that? Because what you want to do is you want to incorporate these normal conversations and not make them awkward, and build this relationship of trust with your child from a young age, so that when they're teenagers, they can come to you if they have any questions. And yes, they will feel more awkward about talking about sex and relationships as they grow up, or maybe not. It depends on your relationship, and it depends on the personality of your children as well. But even if those topics become a little bit more awkward, they will know that you are open to talking about them, and that they can come to you if they have any problems. Also, with anything at school, teachers have a class of students to teach, not only your child, although they do the best they can to provide attention and information to all children. This is a very personal matter, sexual education. So it is only expected that you as a parent take part in this process and take the lead in it, and understand that what the school is doing is actually complementary to the education that you give them at home about bodies, sex, feelings, relationships, how we should treat ourselves emotionally, psychologically, as well as physically. You wouldn't expect a teacher to teach your child to how to wash their bodies, right? So it is exactly what I'm talking about, that the parent has a responsibility to engage in this process as well. So following up on that is that this school needs to provide age-appropriate sexual education that respects kids' developmental stages. Although I maintain that it is the parents, the main responsibility is on the parents, because kids, when they're growing up, when they're very little, they spend a lot of time at home, and they learn from the parents, from watching the parents interacting with each other, and how the parents interact with them about sexual education, especially when they're younger. When they go to school, they learn how to socialize and how to be around other children their own age, which may not be the case when they're at home with their families, especially now that our families are becoming smaller and smaller. It is important that at school these subjects are discussed, and that they are done in a respectful manner as well, and that they are based on facts and science. The last thing that I would like to talk about, that I feel is one of the main reasons why we should be providing mindful sexual education, is that it has been proven that children who do not receive sexual education are more at risk of being sexually abused. And that sexual education is the most effective weapon in the fight against sexual violence. And why is that? Because although it is hard for a lot of adults to understand, some children are not able to identify abuse, because nobody has ever told them that a certain kind of behavior is not acceptable. So there are many cases of children, especially smaller children, that suffer abuse, and because this abuse is not aggressive and is not physically painful, they are left to their own devices to deal with the consequences of abuse. And why is that? Because they have never received a sexual education. Nobody has ever told them that there are parts of their bodies that are private, and that nobody has ever told them about consent. And they only realize later, when they're older, that they have suffered abuse, because that's when they start learning about these concepts. But if you start teaching your children about body autonomy and consent and bodily limits and psychological and emotional limits from a younger age, you are providing them with a stronger basis to protect them against this kind of behavior. So these are the reasons why mindful sexuality is incredibly important, and why it should be part of your everyday life on how you deal with your children.